Welcome back to the channel. We are here once again with my Dell 3880, which for 2021 was the cheapest brand new Dell I could buy in a regular desktop form factor. And when I say the cheapest one, I mean this specific one because it had basically nothing in it. It is an i3, came with 4 gigs of RAM, came with a hard drive, no SSD, no graphics card, none of that stuff. And the point of this series, which if you're just stopping in now, there's a playlist for it linked right up there as well as down in the description, so you can go get all caught up if you want, is to go through and upgrade just about everything in this thing. The purpose of today's video is to go from an i3 to an i7, and presently it has 8 gigs of RAM. This is 32 gigs of what should be pretty quick RAM to match our i7 over here. People have repeatedly asked me to go kind of step by step in these videos, so if that's kind of slow for you, there will be timestamps down there in the progress bar where you can go jump around if you like. And as always, there will be links in the description for all the stuff I'm going to use in the video. This guy is probably the one most people would be the most interested in. This is an Intel boxed. As you can see, it's Intel retail boxed. 10th generation i7 10700, and this also comes with the Intel cooler, which people say isn't a very good cooler or whatever. The whole reason I went this way was just to eliminate variables. If it is an Intel cooler, it should cool the Intel chip. And the Intel cooler for the Intel chip should go on the board for the Intel processor inside my Dell PC. So in my mind, this should be the most straightforward thing to do, but we won't really know until we get there. The Corsair Vengeance / Vengeance is mine RAM was just a good deal at the time. It is well-reviewed RAM, comes with what appears to be like decent heat sinking and all that stuff. And this is 32 gigs, which is probably more than most of you will end up needing. But for me, this Dell is going to become, or rather the iteration this Dell is going to become an editing PC for me. So more RAM, more processor, more better. If you think you'd like less RAM, no problem, just buy a little less. I'll throw links down in the description for you for each processor speed and what kind of RAM you probably want with it and all that good stuff. With that out of the way, I don't expect either of these to be a big battle to put in, or at least I sure hope they're not. So I'm going to make the format of today's video a little bit different because I think hardware installation should only be a couple minutes, let's hope. What I'm going to do is we have benchmark testing for the Dell with the 4 gigs of RAM, no graphics card, 8 gigs of RAM, no graphics card, 8 gigs of RAM with a graphics card, so on and so forth. What I'm going to do is leave it with the i3, pluck the graphics card back out of it, put the 32 gigs of RAM in it, run the Pendulum demo again, the GTA 5 demo, and the desktop performance benchmarks, and just see how much difference the RAM on its own makes. I'm going to run those benchmarks again with the graphics card in it, and then finally we'll run them all again with the i7 in it. If there's any need for it, I may take a couple of intermediate steps along the way too, and of course our video rendering performance test, because that is the one that interests me the most. So first and foremost, we're going to need to remove our case side, which there's a thumb screw here and a thumb screw here that are also cut for Phillips head screws. They're a little bit tight when your computer's new, so you probably want a screwdriver to break them loose. Broken loose. After that, just use your fingers to get them on out of there. They're held captive in the case side, so they don't actually come all the way out. Put a finger in this window right here, pull straight back, and then your case side will kind of scooch off. Later on, when it's time to reassemble it, there are tabs, both top and bottom on this side, which lock into windows, both top and bottom. Get the windows and the tabs lined up, push it forward, tighten your screws back down. Once you are in, you should see something that looks like this. In my case, there's a graphics card, that's power supply. The CPU is under the CPU shroud, and our RAM is back here. In my case, I have 2 sticks already in it, so I'll be taking both those sticks out to put my 32 gigs in. I have gigantic ham paws, so I find that it's easier to remove the CPU shroud, which just squeeze those down, and it just kind of pulls off of there. Take that off and set it to the side. For the remainder of my testing, I'll probably leave it off because we're going to have the case side off anyway. Then to get the RAM out, it's easier to do it with the computer laying on its back. The process here is pretty straightforward. You just want to release each tab on each side just by flicking them back. And when you do that, it's going to kind of pick the stick of RAM up and out. And then out it comes. Do the same thing back here on this other slot. Let's get our brand new Vengeance is Mine RAM opened on up. And there she is. And I think just for fun, I'm just going to start with 1 stick for 16 gigs. And yes, I know this will be single channel. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It's okay. And there's a tab in the connector that we need to line up with a tab in the connector. And once that's done, just give it a firm, even push on both sides and you should see those latches spring back up. And there we go. That's all there is to it. The heatsink on this RAM just barely clears the factory cooler. So right there, that gap is maybe 1/16 of an inch. I've heard from other people that not all RAM will fit this configuration because of that. Hopefully we don't have any issues with our Intel cooler, so we'll find out here in a little bit. But while I'm here, I'm also going to pull my graphics card. This is just a GT 1030 we put in it a few videos ago. There is a little blue lever down here on the port that you need to pull back. It helps to sort of finagle. Oh, I completely forgot you also need to release this latch over here on the case. Now it's going to come out a little easier for us. You may or may not have a graphics card. You may or may not need to do this. I'm just going to show it because it's going to be part of this video. We're going to do our benchmarks without and then with. Alrighty, so we're booted up and running now. When you first boot it up, you will get an error that the amount of RAM has changed in the system. That's completely normal. I intended to film that, but forgot, of course. You'll have to pardon my fancy video capture. My capture PC doesn't actually keep up with the performance of this PC. So to give you guys an accurate illustration of what's going on, this way I have to do it. But before we get started, let's double check for new Windows updates. Just did it a moment ago, and it actually installed new firmware too, a bunch of new drivers and stuff. So as of right now, this moment, we are fully up to date, including a new BIOS firmware. It's 1.5 now, I think. So we have our 16 gigs of RAM installed. Let's try our pendulum demo and see what happens. And this is just a single stick, so no dual channel support. It's actually doing a pretty decent job versus what we saw with a single 4 gig stick. We're between 10 and 13 frames a second, I would say. Probably maxing out about 11 frames a second right there. Doing better than I thought it would. Let's go try user bench and our results. Still upset about our graphics, that's fine. 16 gigs of RAM is plenty. That's basically what it's saying. I'll scroll through this slowly so you can read if you want. It's got this warning about XMP, and I looked this up, and XMP is basically just RAM overclocking, or at least that is my understanding of it, and we do not have the ability to do that with this motherboard. So no worries about that. So we're going to copy our results, and we will compare them to where we were. So we were at 10%, 81, and 9, and back here with our 8 gigs and our SSD, we were at 14, 86, and 14. I've run these tests a few times because I found this, what I'm going to call an anomaly. I don't know why it would have slowed down with way more RAM, but it seems to. That could be a dual channel thing just because there's one stick in there. It could be something else. So I don't know, it's weird. It could also be that we're running different versions of the benchmark software. Maybe things have changed. But right now, it's claiming that doubling the RAM from 8 to 16 is hurt performance. Actually, it's given our RAM a 39% score right there. Yeah, and it's saying all of our previous attempts were twice as fast, except the first one. The first one was at 40%. So yeah, it looks like that's upset about being single channel. So it has 32 gigs in it now, and you can see the warning I forgot to record last time, where it's telling us the amount of RAM has changed. Hit continue. We are booted up again, no sweat. Let's go back to that pendulum demo, and it appears dual channel is a big deal here. We're running 16, 17 FPS, which is about what we were with 8 gigs across 2 sticks. Turning our spin rate up, we're pretty much able to maintain that 15, 16 occasionally, 17 occasionally. So dual channel does appear to be a big deal. Let's go try PC benchmark again. Alrighty, and we are back with more results. I think these are still lower than our results with just 8 gigs of RAM, which strikes me as weird. It is now saying that our RAM is enough to do video editing, virtual machine hosting, blah, blah, blah. Those are all things that I want to do, so that's good. Still upset about our video card, which is no big surprise. Still saying it's kind of slow RAM, but it was also kind of budget RAM, I guess, so that's good. So that time we were at 13, 77, and 12, which is a significant jump from the single channel performance. But actually, it's just a touch slower than we were with 8 gigs of RAM. I'm going to chalk that up to these being run with different versions of the software. Now we have our 32 gigs of RAM and our 1030 installed. Let's try our pendulum demo again. I don't think that's widely different. We're like 33, 34 frames a second. Occasionally I'm seeing 35 flash up there. Looking pretty good though. Oh, it's getting up to like 40 now, 42. All right, let's go try our user bench study again, and we are done. I'm mostly curious about our RAM speed. It was upset about our graphics performance before. Let's go to our results here. Copy them off quick before I forget. I'll scroll through this so you can see it. RAM speed's unchanged, of course. Alrighty, Let's take a look. 2190-19. So when I compare that to our last 1030, it's actually taking a performance hit across the board if this is to be believed. I can't think of why this RAM would be like 10% slower than the cheapest stuff possible. It is rated for a much higher speed, and maybe when you run it slower, it is too slow? I don't know. It's weird. I didn't expect that result. But it's the RAM I bought, so that's what we're going to run with. And now that we got a graphics card back in it, we can probably run the GTA 5 demo. Of course, every single time we touch this, it has to update. And some more updates. You know, just while it's on my mind, let's just let it do all of them. Sure enough, they all needed updates. You would think I would be better at this by now. But no! So we'll reboot the whole thing just to give it a clean shake. We are rebooted. Let's get GTA rolling and see if we can get into our demo. Alright. And this is 1080 HD as I recall. I do remember that much. It looks nice just sitting here watching it. I think the performance was higher before, or maybe about the same. I think the performance really picks up when we get the jet here in a second. This is the one I was thinking of, I think. Yep. Yeah, I thought it would pick up right there, but I guess not. So it looks like we're pretty much stuck on 24 FPS. So we were not RAM limited before from the looks of things. So I think that confirms that for most folks out there, 8 gigs of RAM is probably plenty, at least for these games. Maybe with more modern, AA releases, you might want more, but I'm not really seeing a big difference with our 32 gigs. We will see that difference probably in the actual work I do with it on a day-to-day basis. It wouldn't be uncommon for me to have 3 or 4 video projects open at the same time, just depending on what's going on. So I will certainly get my use out of the RAM personally. But now I think it's on to CPU time, which I think everybody would get use out of. So I suppose the first thing we should do is get our guy unboxed, because I have not done this before either. I assume is what most of you are here for. So I'm not sure what to expect as well. And being that this is a $500 video, I didn't want to do this off camera. Cheat you guys out of the experience. So let's slip our guy on out of here. Let's see what we get. Ooh, got an i7 case badge. In all my years of doing this stuff, granted it's been a long time since I built one, I've never actually gotten a case badge. There's our i7. Heavier than I thought it'd be. And this is our probably pretty low quality cooler. Oh, and I should also mention too, this is not the K version of this processor, which is overclockable. Again, I didn't want to get into all that stuff because there are so many people that aren't going to be interested in that. And if they are, they probably already know what they're doing. Or at least know better than I do. Does that have thermal paste already applied? Indeed it does. That is an interesting arrangement. Can't say I've ever seen stripes of thermal paste before. First thing I want to do is make sure that's gonna, approximately bolt up and everything. I think it will. I'm not sure if it's gonna fit with our RAM. It depends how these little mounting tabs or whatever work in reality. It looks like this is as straightforward as you would think. Those appear to be push pins that just lock into the motherboard, so we don't even need to worry about screw threads, I think. So that's neat. Now we're just going to take a Phillips and just kind of crack each one loose, if possible. Yep, there are 4. There's 1 on each corner. And those are spring-loaded screws, so I am just sort of going a little at a time. The motherboard pin header is going to be a thing too. I don't know if that's a standard header. We'll observe some wire colors if we need to be sure. Hey, speaking of, where's the freaking wire harness on our new guy? I'm just dumb. They tucked it in so nicely that I missed it. There it is. And it looks like it is keyed, but non-colored, so hopefully it goes on that same connector. And again, whether or not I needed to, this is one of the great many reasons I just went ahead and went with an Intel cooler, because, they ought to know, right? Okay, I think the thermal paste, it was just the thermal paste holding it on. This connector, I would think, would just pull straight up, but perhaps not. Interestingly, that is a round heatsink pad on a square chip. I guess our Intel guy is the same way. I can't tell if there's a locking feature on that. I think there is, actually. Get in here with a little screwdriver. Come on. There we go. There it's a little easier to see, but there's a little lock paw on that side of the connector that you have to push away to get the wire harness to release from that. And that was no big deal. This is a ZIF socket, or zero insertion force socket. So this wire should pop out of that connector somehow and then just flip up and uncage our CPU. Seems somewhat reluctant to do that. Seems like an awful big push to get this wire out of that holder. Ouch. Hopefully that was the right way to do that. It just came up and bit me in the thumb. Our processor should just, yep, it's free to travel now. I'll take some of our RAM packaging so I don't make a mess with the thermal paste that's on it. And we're going to set it in there with the pins up so I'm less likely to bend them, because I am going to use that chip again, at least for a while. Get our new hotness here out of the packaging. Actually, before I do that, take a few minutes to observe what's going on here. Every processor I've ever seen, there'll be a corner lopped off where pin 1 is, and it's this corner. You can see it's on a 45, and these other ones are radiused. The connector will almost always have a corner where there are no pins, and it looks like it's that corner right there. There's like a stair-step pattern there. So I believe that will be pin 1. Yep, and the socket's even labeled. There's a little arrow on it there pointing to pin 1. These are zero insertion force sockets, which is good, which means you don't have to actually push chips in. So normally you just kind of drop it on there the way you saw me sort of pluck out the old one and they just fall on. Well, back in the days before ZIF sockets, it was more important to know what your orientation was, because you actually had to push the chips in, and if you were wrong, you would break the pins off, and that would be bad. And here, just to give you guys a little better look at what we got, you can see on this guy, they've put dots on the 3 corners that are not pin 1, and they've put a matching arrow on pin 1. So that is also kind of nice. It makes it that much harder to screw up, and it looks like there are also engagement tabs on the slots. So you pretty much can't get this wrong. So that felt nice. You saw I just kind of plucked it in there. This is our actual locking feature. Just want to make sure I'm not doing anything stupid. No. I think it's pretty much as straightforward as you think it is. Just dropped right on there. I'm going to plug the cooler in, and this one is keyed, just like the last one was for that locking feature. I'm finding it does install kind of hard because of that. In fact, just to make sure I don't bend up any pins, I'm just going to take my screwdriver and just see if I can push that connector, that lock over, just to make things easier to install. Yeah, I think I'm making it worse. Oh, there we go. Just got her. As I said, it looks like those are just plastic push pins that just push into the board. And I can see the notion of how these work. There's a peg that comes out and expands those, but I don't think they're going to expand into the threads in the board, or in the case, or whatever's going on there. I don't know if they'll actually drop down inside those screw bosses, which I think are in the case. I'm going to experiment with it just a little bit more, but I'm thinking we're probably going to end up using the included Dell cooler. Yep, that's what's going to have to happen. The Intel i7 cooler is just meant to go in holes. It's not going to work out with the threaded bosses that I think are in the case. So we're going to have to go back to our Dell cooler, which may or may not be suitable for an i7. I already started cleaning some of the thermal paste off of there. I'm just going to take a paper towel with some isopropyl alcohol and finish the job. I'll put a dot of thermal grizzly on there because I think I have some around here somewhere. We'll get that guy screwed back in and we'll light it off and we'll see how it goes. So for those of you playing at home, do not get this kit with this cooler for this motherboard because it's not going to work out for you. Alrighty, and what I've done there is that the screws are bottomed all the way out on the springs. I'm just going to crack them loose about half a turn, just to give them room for thermal expansion or whatever, and probably also to keep the noise down a little. I'll plug this back in. There we go. i7 installed. As is our custom, I've got the camera rolling while I turn the power back on, so if it explodes, we'll get to watch it together. No smoke or anything else. It's doing the thing where it's going to take a little bit before it does its like shut down again thing because there was a hardware change. There it just shut off. To my surprise, it's not coming up with the BIOS. It tells me the amount of RAM change, doesn't say anything about a CPU. Seems weird. Let's go to system information. And there she is, 10.7, 10700, 2.9 gigahertz, 8 cores, 16 logical processors. Cool. Not expecting to see anything monumentally different with our pendulum demo, but we'll try it. Yeah, nothing too different, like 28, 29 FPS, 30. I imagine it'll do the same thing it did last time, where if I watch it long enough, it'll creep back up around 40. Yep, there it goes. So, nothing too surprising there. Let's try user bench again, see what happens. So we are all done here. I don't think our scores really came up a whole lot. Processor with an outstanding single-core score. The CPU is the cat's whiskers. It demolishes everyday tasks such as web browsing, office apps, video, blah, blah, blah. Gaming performance an 88.5. All right, then. So still telling us our graphics card sucks, which we knew. Saying my CPU is running below expectations, which is interesting. Performing way below. Wonder why. I don't know what's really up with that. We'll worry more about that when we swap motherboards. It's telling us our graphics card's performing really well. Our SSD is performing crazy good, apparently. RAM, same deal. It's telling us our RAM performance is really poor. Again, we'll revisit this when we swap motherboards and take a look. So our benchmarks here are not too impressive, but what are you gonna do? Let's compare these to where we were before the i7, and basically nothing changed. Our desktop score, it went up 2 points, 2%. Work went up 2% too. Where were we when we started? We're at 2192, 21? Okay, this was awful. So really, here again, it's telling us with just the GT 1030 that we're outperforming what we have now, which seems completely insane to me. Makes me think there's something up with the benchmark utility, that maybe it's changed. I don't know. But this is what we've been doing all along. This is what we're going to keep doing, and that's how it is. Since I'm dying to know, much more so than I am the gaming performance, because I don't think that's going to change, I want to see what video rendering performance is like, because that should be radically faster. Alrighty, so what you're looking at here is the first video of this series. This is the unboxing video. I've rendered this multiple times as a benchmark. We're about to render it again and see what happens. So this is just a straight up timed benchmark. Faster is better. Render. So that completed in 22 minutes and 7 seconds. And I have to say I'm pretty disappointed by that. With the i3, it rendered that in 32 minutes and 7 seconds, and I was more looking for this to be like a 1-to-1, where it would render 1 minute of video in about a minute. Presently, I'm doing my video rendering on this guy, which is a 4th generation i7, and it ran about the same speed as the i3 that was in the 3880. And the i7 is supposed to be over 100% faster than the processor in this thing, so I was really expecting a lot more. To the degree that I'm wondering if maybe something's wrong. I'm gonna go check out a couple things in the BIOS and maybe look up some other stuff and see what's up, but our user bench score sucks, and my performance score here in reality also sucks, which makes me think there's something that I did wrong. Let me dig in and we'll find out. Welcome to Frustration Station. Everyone please get your tickets ready. After messing around with this thing for a significant period of time, I decided to start actually watching what was going on with the processor and power and everything else. I'm using a tool called CPU ID here. It's from CPUs. I will link where you can get this tool down in the description, but I will warn you that their site is incredibly spammy, so be careful what you click on. But the tool itself is wonderful. What you are looking at right here is a screen grab of the steady state of the machine just before I'm about to begin another session of rendering while capturing this to my capture device. But anyway, what you're seeing right here is with no load on all the CPU cores. So there are 8 physical cores and then 8 virtual cores for a total of 16 quote-unquote processors in the machine. But with no load on it, with it just sitting here idling, the processor is basically running at 4.6 gigahertz, which is quote-unquote its boost speed. And the way that I understand this is supposed to work, and my understanding could be wrong, is that the processor will just stay in boost unless it is to conserve power or to save itself from dying of heat. And up here you can see our thermal load is fine. It's at 100 degrees F, which is basically half temperature from where I would expect it to be throttling performance. Power consumption is fine. It's not even at 5 watts yet. And it's a 65 watt chip, but it can boost up to 125 watts. And that's that heat relationship I was just talking about. I think the way this is supposed to work is that it will balance its boost power with its temperature, is how it is supposed to work. But the way it actually appears to be working is it's coming up to 65 watts and Dell is throttling it by power to perform right there. So you're gonna see this spike up to like 125 watts here, but only very briefly. And then it's gonna drop the performance down to like 3.5 gigahertz and just let it rot there. So either through my ignorance by having a setting wrong or something like that, or just Dell's BIOS or the chipset or whatever they're using it looks like this motherboard is throttling this CPU to stay at about 75% power, which sucks. I don't know if it's me or I don't know if it's it, but that is what's going on. And I'll start the footage here and you'll be able to actually see that happen. Alrighty, and that happened all so quickly you may not have seen it happen, but it actually didn't even allow it to come up to 125 watts. It came up to 108, and then it settled just bang right on that 65 watt number. It's loading all the cores at more or less 100%, but you can see it just immediately throttled the performance back by over a gigahertz. It's pulling, 20-25% of the performance of the chip straight out of it, and it isn't even close to what I would imagine being its thermal threshold. I let this happen a couple times. I ran that render like twice, so I've watched this data for at least an hour to see if it's consistent, and it is. It does this every time, just like this. And at these temperatures, which is pretty much what it maintains throughout this whole run, the cooling fan never even kicks on to high. If you've been watching the whole series, you've noticed a lot of people ask me how loud it is, and I say I barely ever hear the thing run. Well, this is part of the reason why, is the fan isn't even kicking on. I don't know if that's a byproduct of it being an i3, if that's a quirk of the chipset for an i3, where it just comes up to this thermal load and that's it, or what. But what I can see happening is this processor never gets to its full potential with however it's configured right now. So I am going to change the configuration. I do know that the i7 machines, as Dell ships them, come with the larger power supply. That is still the 200 watt PSU from my i3, and since I got it laying around, I'm going to go ahead and drop this 360 watt PSU out of an Optiplex in it, which we have already done in the prior video, and just see what happens. I can't imagine there's any kind of circuitry on the board that knows what power supply is plugged into it, but what the hell, weird things happen. And you can see I've taken great care to do that. We just got it laid in there on top of the other one. But she's online and running. So let's get over and take a look at CPUs here. Temperatures are super low because I just booted it up. It's pulling 4 watts, no processor load, and it's up full, 4.6. A minute ago, 4.7 gigahertz. Let's get over here and kick our render off, and we'll see if it behaves exactly the same again. Oh, there it goes. I had hopes there for just a brief moment. Yeah, performance right back down to where it was. So, okay, no, I don't think there's anything more to see here. We'll go ahead and cancel that. So the last Hail Mary here is going to be to see if Dell support can identify that it's now an i7 and maybe reflash a different BIOS or revision or something. I'm betting this is not going to work. And I've already either never had or uninstalled Support Assist. So we'll grab it and let it install, and we'll let it do its own thing. Well, an Intel chipset driver, that's promising. The installed version is super old. Let's find out. Installation completed, huh? Okay, I'm gonna reboot it and see what happens. And we are rebooted and we are back. I seriously doubt anything is gonna change. Yeah, it didn't even boost up that time. It was already warmer than it wanted to be. I don't know. I don't know. That's probably the good summary for the video. So off I went out into the world to try to know. And it turns out that this generation i7 has all sorts of interesting behavior. And a lot of those behaviors you can control typically through your motherboard firmware, except we don't have any of those custom options in the Dell firmware, of course, because, it's a boxed PC. So out of the box, as in, literally out of this box, I guess, these things will only boost for up to 28 seconds, which explains some of the behavior. The thermal limit seems pretty conservative the way Dell has it set up, with it only going up to about 150F, but I'm reading other people are having thermal cut issues around 75C. But on their systems, these things will actually boost up to like 225 watts. We were only seeing about 105. Now, maybe that's just what was being reported, or maybe that's what was really happening. I simply still don't know the answer to that one. But there are all sorts of behavior quirks with these processors that I can't do anything about as long as it's in that board. But we're moving on to bigger and better things anyway. And in this case, that is quite literal. Next up, full-size ATX case, full-size ATX power supply, and then the video after that, full-size ATX motherboard, so we can get off of whatever garbage is going on in this thing, and we should hopefully be able to see what that i7 can really do. But that is for next month. As always, I like to try and get one of these out about once a month. That's about every 4 weeks. So if it hasn't been 4 weeks since the last one, it isn't time yet. But I do really appreciate you guys stopping in for this one, and we'll catch you on the next one. I'm Max, that's Saddington Bear, and we make videos like this all the time. Here are a couple links to some other videos we've made, and we really appreciate you guys stopping in.